Two men, the same bank, the same Tuesday afternoon. One with negative $9,000 in his account, the other with $2,150,000. And no, the man with $2,150,000 was not the one who arrived in the Range Rover. It was the man who came in a 2010 Honda. It was a Tuesday. The year was 2016, and Frank was 47 years old. At 2 o'clock, a man walked in wearing a tailored suit, a gleaming watch on his wrist. He was there to apply for a loan. Frank opened his file to review it and froze. Behind all the expensive clothes, the car, the watch, the man's bank account was in the negative. At 4 o'clock, another man came in, completely ordinary looking, a fleece jacket, sneakers, a 2010 Honda in the parking lot. Frank had spent years assuming this man was barely getting by. He placed his retirement summary on the desk, $2,150,000 in investments. And on that piece of paper, there was not a single stock pick, not a single lucky break, just ordinary decisions repeated quietly over 30 years. That evening, Frank came home, set me down on the kitchen table, and emptied me out. A gas receipt, a restaurant receipt, 3 grocery receipts. I will never forget the look on Frank's face, that mix of sadness and quiet disappointment. And I am Frank's wallet. I've been in his pocket for 30 years. I've watched every decision he made and every one he didn't. Today, I'm going to tell you the 10 habits Frank built after that Tuesday. None of them are exciting, but none of them are the kind of advice you give to a 25-year-old either. Before we begin, let me tell you a few things. In the 4th habit, I'm going to refuse to give you the advice that channels like this one always give. In my opinion, that advice becomes condescending when said to someone in their 50s. And in the 8th habit, I'm going to share the clearest dividing line Frank ever saw in 30 years of banking. The difference between those who built wealth and those who didn't wasn't income, it wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck, it was something else entirely. But don't worry, we'll get there as the video goes on. First, let me tell you why the math changes at 47. That night, Frank ran the numbers. I watched him carefully from the kitchen table. He wanted to retire at 60. To make that happen, he had 13 years. 13. The same amount of time it takes a child to go from kindergarten to graduation. And until that night, Frank had never once stopped to think about that number. Do this subtraction right now. How old are you? At what age do you want the option to stop? Hold that number in your mind, because everything I'm going to tell you in this video needs to fit inside those years. Here's what changes after 40. In your 20s, your biggest enemy is ignorance. In your 40s, your biggest enemy is well-intentioned mistakes, saying yes to your child, telling your spouse, "We'll figure it out." In your 50s, you come face to face with a far more serious enemy, time. If you make a mistake at 25, you likely have plenty of time to recover. If you make the same mistake at 47, you have only 13 years to be where you want to be at the age you're aiming for. So at 47, what saves you is not making one big dramatic move, it's staying away from mistakes. And yes, that might not sound exciting, but you don't need excitement in your financial life. You need solid, steady steps. When Ramsey Solutions interviewed more than 10,000 millionaires, 79% had never received an inheritance. Only 31% had ever averaged $100,000 or more per year. And the average millionaire reached that point not in 10 years, not in 20, but through an average of 28 years of disciplined work and consistent behavior. Not one of them credited stock picking as the primary reason for their success. What I'm about to tell you is what happened inside those 28 years. Habit 1. Drive your car longer than it feels comfortable. Frank made his most expensive mistake in 2003 at 34 years old. He bought a new BMW. The monthly payment was $650, which was no small amount at the time. I still remember how much those payments wore me down. He never said a word to me about it, but that week when he pulled me from his pocket in the evenings, his hands were slower. I can't read his mind, but after years of knowing him, I understood just how heavy he felt that day. Today, the situation is even worse. According to Edmunds' late 2025 data, the average monthly payment on a new vehicle is $772. That's $9,000 a year, not counting insurance, maintenance, or fuel. And according to Kelley Blue Book, a new car loses approximately 20% of its value the moment it leaves the dealership. By the end of the first year, 30% is gone. Frank sold the BMW in 2012. He now drives a 2014 Honda Civic with a small dent on the rear right door, and every time he looks at that dent, he smiles. According to Ramsey, the median price millionaires pay for a vehicle is $31,367. The three brands they drive most: Toyota, Honda, Ford. In other words, the man Frank saw at 4 o'clock. Here's the math. Instead of making that $772 payment, if you drive a paid-off car and invest the difference at 8% return, you accumulate approximately $170,000 over 15 years. Remember, a car brand adds nothing to your actual value. See it simply as a means of transportation, because at the end of the day, that's genuinely all it is. So ask yourself this: who sees you in the parking lot, and what does that person add to your life 15 years from now? Habit 2. Stop paying for square footage you don't use. This is the habit nobody wants to talk about, because people treat it as though it's failure. In 2020, Frank had 4 bedrooms, and 2 people lived in it. The children had left. The 2 upstairs rooms had quietly become storage. I was in Frank's pocket, and every first of the month I felt the same thing: mortgage, property tax, heating, insurance, maintenance. $1,100 a month, just for rooms nobody walked into. $11,200 a year, for rooms that sat empty and collected boxes. Frank resisted the decision for 2 years. He said the same thing to me over and over: "This house is our memories. My grandchildren will come here too." Then one day he asked a different question: how many days a year do my grandchildren actually come? The answer was 8 days. $13,200 a year for 8 days. $1,650 per day. I understand when it's involved your grandchildren or your children, cutting back in that area might feel like being cheap, but this is simply about removing a worry that exhausts an already tired body and mind. Your grandchildren, your children, they will still come. You will still share time together. You will still make memories. But the memories are what you share, not the rooms in your house. I had this exact conversation with Frank at the time. That year, Frank sold the house and moved into a 2-bedroom, single-story home. The grandchildren still come, still 8 days. Nobody noticed a thing. We've always been told that a big house is a sign of success. But after 40, a house stops being a statement and becomes a line item. The day Frank moved, he said, "I'm not investing in a house, I'm investing in peace of mind." You do the same. Invest not in your house, but in your peace. Now you answer this: how many rooms in your home would you honestly say you could live without? Habit 3. Don't buy new until you've used up what you have. This habit is closely connected to the second one, because downsizing your home means coming face to face with everything you've accumulated over 30 years. In 2018, Frank cleaned out his garage. It took him 2 full days. He never told me what he found, but since I was in his pocket, I saw it myself. For a long stretch after that, he had no reason to buy anything. Whatever he was looking for was already there. But this goes well beyond the garage. Even after the kids left home, Frank kept doing the grocery shopping in exactly the same amounts as before. I saw the receipts, same number every week, and yet there were now only 2 people at the table. He had a client at the bank, 55 years old, earning $180,000 a year, $35,000 in his investment account, and a garage packed with things he never used. That man's problem wasn't his income level, it was that he had no real awareness of what he already owned. Frank's rule became this: nothing new gets purchased until the existing one is completely finished, genuinely worn out, or no longer functional. Whether it's a winter coat, a phone, or a car. If you ask me, the most expensive sentence a person says after 40 is this: I already had one somewhere, I just couldn't find it. How many times have you said that?
Habit 4. This is the part where most finance channels talk to you about your coffee. I'm not going to do that here. Telling a 50-year-old who has raised 2 children and worked for 25 years to stop buying lattes is condescending, and it's well outside the point we're actually making. Let me tell you something else instead. One night, at 47, Frank emptied everything out of me onto the table and started dropping every receipt that came out of me into a box. For 1 full month, every receipt I produced went into that box. Every evening, I got a little lighter. The box got a little fuller. At the end of the month, he emptied the box onto the table. I was waiting for the result with genuine curiosity. None of the receipts were large. The biggest one was $31. The total was $847. Frank multiplied that by 12, then by 13, the number of years left until the age he had decided he wanted to stop. $27.40 a day in small purchases adds up to exactly $10,000 a year. $27.40, a coffee, since I was already there, and subscriptions you don't use. According to Empower Research, Americans spend an average of $44.50 a month at coffee shops alone. But the point isn't the coffee. The point is this. At 25, behaving this way is a preference. At 47, it's a decision, because you've reached a certain age and your habits can produce consequences far larger than you realize. Habit 5. Being able to say no to your adult child. This was the hardest thing for Frank, because it wasn't about money, it was about how much he loved his children. It was 2019. Frank's daughter was 24. She had just started a new job, but had accumulated credit card debt, $8,400. Dad, just this once. I trembled in his pocket because I had heard this sentence before. Frank's cousin had said it, Frank's brother had said it, and just once had never been just once. Deep down, Frank was uncomfortable with it, but he had always seen refusing to help the people he loved as somehow wrong or inappropriate. Frank didn't sleep that night. He genuinely wanted to help his daughter, but she had made this a pattern, and she was no longer a child. She was a fully grown adult. The next day, he told her daughter no, but he didn't just say no. He offered something instead. Let's build your budget together. I'll teach you the method, but I won't be paying off your debt. His daughter was hurt that day. They didn't speak for 2 weeks. It weighed heavily on Frank. 3 years later, that daughter had a credit score of 780, and she said to her father, "Thank you for not rescuing me." Had Frank paid off her debt that day, he might have been celebrated as a wonderful father, but his daughter would never have learned to manage herself financially. According to Bank of America research, 45% of parents over 50 provide regular financial support to their adult children. The average is over $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. And that money is coming directly out of your retirement. The person paying their child's credit card bill is giving up the financing of their own 65. Saying no is not a failure to love your child. It is teaching them to stand on their own feet. If someone came to mind while you were listening to this section, send them this video. You don't have to be the one to start the conversation. Habit 6. Do your shopping in stores, not online. I understand this better than anyone, because when you shop online, you never open me. For 30 years, every single time Frank was about to spend money, I was opened. And sometimes, in that moment, seeing the money leaving me, Frank would change his mind about what he was about to buy. After 2015, that moment disappeared entirely. Card saved, one click, me sitting in his pocket, closed, completely unaware of what was happening. Research shows online shoppers spend 15 to 30% more on the same products compared to people who buy in physical stores. This is not a coincidence. Every barrier between you and your money was deliberately removed. And at 25, an impulse buy is a t-shirt. At 50, it's a pressure washer. It's a massage chair. Frank bought one in 2020, $340. He used it twice. It's currently in the garage, buried inside the pile I told you about earlier. After that, he put 3 rules in place. Shopping apps were deleted from his phone, saved cards were removed from websites, and every non-essential purchase over $100 would be made in a physical store. You have to get in the car, you have to walk the aisles, you have to wait in line. Every step takes you to one question: do I actually need this? Habit 7. Treat your health as a retirement line item. This habit doesn't look like it's about money, but it is the most expensive item in your retirement plan. It was 2021. Frank was 52. A routine blood test. The doctor took off his glasses and said, "Frank, you're at the edge. You don't have a condition right now, but if you keep going this way, you will within a few years." I was in Frank's pocket that day, and on the drive home, I was never once opened. The atmosphere was too heavy for that. That night, he didn't sleep again. The reason was the dozens of client files he had seen at the bank over the years, files of people whose retirement accounts were solid, but who were now forced to direct a significant portion of their money toward medication and care costs. Because the cost of a chronic condition is not a one-time expense. It comes out every month. It gets deducted from your portfolio like rent, and it's rent you can never stop paying. The next morning, Frank started walking, 40 minutes a day. He began going for checkups twice a year, not because he was sick, but to make sure he wouldn't be. 15 months later, his numbers were back to normal. If Frank hadn't taken that step to change himself, both his body and I would have been exhausted by what followed. Health is not something to be taken lightly. Habit 8. Treat yourself like a bill. I told you that Frank saw a single clear dividing line at that bank over 30 years. The difference between those who built wealth and those who couldn't was not income. The line was order. Most people operate in this sequence. The paycheck arrives, bills get paid, spending happens, and if anything is left over from the paycheck, that remainder goes into an investment account. This sequence is one of the single biggest reasons most people's savings never move forward. Spending expands to match whatever is available every single time. When saving comes last, saving gets crushed. I watched Frank live this way for 23 years. In the last week of every month, I was completely empty. On the 26th of the month, Frank would open me, look inside, then close me again. When he reached 47, he reversed the sequence entirely. On the day the paycheck lands, automatic instructions pull money out of the account immediately. Retirement account, emergency fund, investment account, before rent, before bills, before everything. And after 40, this carries an additional advantage.
Once you pass 50, you gain the right to make catch-up contributions to retirement accounts above the annual limit, which means the point where you think you've fallen behind is actually the point where you can accumulate the fastest. That is a genuinely significant advantage. The proof isn't a single person. Through state automatic IRA programs, more than 1 million workers saved over $2 billion. The money leaves the account before the employee ever sees it, which means you never fall into the trap of thinking, "I had the money, but it slipped away before I could save it." Because if you see that money sitting in your account, your brain immediately wants to spend it. Frank's first month was painful. I felt it. That month he reached into his pocket several times, checking whether he had enough. He did. And in the months that followed, running this system became easier and easier. If you take one single thing from this video, take this: one instruction, one date, one amount. Frank's set at 47, yours can be set today. Those were the 8 boring but effective decisions I wanted to share with you in this video. I have 2 questions for you. First, which of these 8 habits made you most uncomfortable? Which one made you think, "That's me, that's exactly what I do"? Write the number in the comments. Let's talk about it. Second, at the beginning, I asked you to do a subtraction, your age and the age at which you want the option to stop. Share that number with us too, because Frank's number was 13, and the day he learned it, he was frightened. But the years he spent without knowing that number cost him far more. If you're going to start today, don't try all 10 at once. Frank didn't either. Pick one, do it for 30 days. Pushing yourself too hard, burning out and quitting entirely produces a far worse outcome than starting small. When you try it, you'll see what feels like deprivation in the first year feels like freedom in the 10th. The person who takes charge of their money takes charge of their life. See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and leave a comment.